welcome to this another episode of ECCB Connects. This week we bring you the final part of the inaugural ECCB Distinguished Alumni Series, where Dr. Orel Williams continues to share his thoughts and guiding principles with the staff of the ECCB.
When the Eurozone was being established when they were going to issue the euro, they came here. They came here to see how we were doing it. How did you do it? You have 8 countries, and how does the political economy fit? They came here. So any discussion of monetary unions, regional securities market, actually there are not many countries that have groupings that have a regional security that works like ours. It's quite segmented. So the ECCB is like a first among equals in the discussion of monetary unions. Now, we too should learn from the Europeans too, right, at the same time. And I think there are lessons there for us. So I want you to understand that by the time I got to the IMF, my training was already done. The foundation was already laid here. And so by the time I got there, I knew. In fact, one of the things that we do here quite well is that when you're an economist for one country, you know all the sectors. When you're an economist in Brazil, you only know one sector. So you know how to join up the dots much better than most counterparts coming in. So that's your strength. You leverage your strength. All right? So I want you to understand that this is not an accident of history. This is real life, and the bank has really made its mark. In fact, to tell you the truth, at the IMF, the ECCB has the largest alumni in the fund, right? And they meet, and a lot of them will tell you that their careers took off once they started working on it. So you have a lot of goodwill in the fund, right, who can come and train the staff. So I think that in joining up the dots, and I'm promised to be disciplined, I don't want you to fall off to sleep, is that really we don't really know. We think we do, but by getting a sharper definition of your reality, you get it through collaboration and being open and being humble, and being willing to hear a different standpoint. I think what has worked for me individually as an international public servant is that, the best laboratory you have is your home. Charity begins at home. And one of the things that, at least my parents taught me was that, if you want others to respect you, you respect yourself and you treat them the way you want to be treated. And then that's it. Even though we may have titles, doctor this and that, but at the end of the day, you're just basically a human being. And 4 things that I've taken away, what I call my 4 agreements, is that always do your best, choose your words carefully, don't assume too much, and don't take it personally. I think 2 things as we would have to be careful of when we are doing applied work is correlation and causation, especially when you're looking at data. So whenever you see the seagulls fly south, you see rain, they don't necessarily cause the rain, but they help you with predicting the rain. And that's one of the things that we have to be careful of as applied researchers. When does correlation mean causation? The other thing that I think as researchers you have to be careful of is what we call identification. If I were to put up that slide now and show you a bunch of dots and say this is supply and demand, how do you put supply that is upward sloping and demand that to a bunch of dots? So if you put that dot, what do we see? And this goes back to my point earlier. We all see different things, and we'd all be right. There'll be no right or wrong answer. Some people can even get very esoteric and it's an infinity symbol, it's the all-seeing eye. Some people could say, well, I see a black dot. Somebody would say, well, why focus on the black dot? I see the white part. That's more dominant, right? So we see what we want. That's my point about we interpret things differently. So if I were to say that supply and demand, this represents supply and demand, we don't know how to draw the line. So you would have to say if supply is random and for a given demand, I can determine price for a given quantity, right? So if you go to the next slide, you have to make heroic assumptions to get to that. So what all I'm saying is that when you do applied work, be humble, be open to suggestion, because it takes a lot of simplifying assumptions to get to something that approximate a reality where all the parts are moving, right? Because you can have a hurricane that disrupts supply, you can get additional income from citizens by investment, so demand shifts. So everything is moving around. And it's the one area in economics that we've never really fully resolved. And that's all I wanted to say on this. So I think going forward, research, I encourage you to collaborate with your colleagues across the different departments, because when you look at BMOD supervision and research, you're just collating, analyzing data. You're just looking at data, whether it might be banking, it might be managing liquid, it's data. You have a corporate function and admin that does something totally different. So in a way, you're in artificial silos, but in reality, you're really processing different ends of the spectrum of information. So in closing, Maya Angelou said that people may not remember what you said or what you did. Of course, it depends on what you said and what you did, right? But they remember how they felt. And so I hope I made you feel a little better about yourselves collectively and to be proud of this venerable institution in which we all are today. Thank you very much.
What aren't we learning that we should learn about collaboration, even though we have an economic union and a regional central bank and moving towards the single financial and economic space? What haven't we learned?
One of the constraints in the region, and this is nothing new, I remember Governor Venner this is one of his, how do I get people to move? But I think also too, how do you get small and medium-sized enterprises going? How do you get young people to say, rather than wait for the manna to fall from heaven, how do they take, are we instructing in schools that, you do CXC and then you do, I don't know what it's called now, it used to be A levels, I don't know what it's called, CAPE. And then, so you kind of in a mechanical way sort of progress. But then maybe not everyone needs to pursue that path. Maybe some people are technical, they're good with their hands, and some of us needs a mechanic to fix the car. You need an electrician to, run the wires. So maybe we need to reorient the way our education system is designed. Because, I think one of the challenges we have, we are probably always the last ones in the value chain to change, in that, we inherited a British system that just automatically selected the top 15 to 25%. So what happens to the rest? That's capital. That's your human capital. So how do you put this to use? If you don't have a viable outlet for employment, they're going to leave or resort to crime. So I think one thing for this union to work effectively, not only capital must move, labor must also move, and that comes with its own frictions too. If you see what's happening in Europe with the Syrian refugees, there are local idiosyncrasies that we should try and understand as well. But I think the business model also has to change, where you think that in order to get a job, I work with government or I work with the biggest corporate in my country. But maybe there's an opportunity for finding a way to provide capital, seed capital, venture capital for startups. It's not an area that's my strength, but I think if you want to have structural transformation That's probably one area we haven't really explored. And we used to have an export credit facility as well, but I'm not sure how that works now. So what I'm saying, we have tried different things, but maybe, as I mentioned, if you want to know where you're going, you probably need to just go back and sort of do an assessment of what have we learned, what have we done, what did we do well, what didn't we do. Remember the gentleman who, is it Edison, who did the light bulb? I mean, he was tinkering until he got it right. So, and what I'm saying, and I think this speaks to the general theme of my intervention, is that there's no silver bullet really. What works for us, what worked for Korea may not work for us. So we have to look at our own organic economies in their own unique and peculiar way.
Thank you very much for your very insightful words. Took some notes here, and I'm sure I'm going to be referring to these in the future. I was just wondering if you could share with us what, in your view, are the key impediments to the growth or to advancing the growth process in the ECCU and in the wider Caribbean? What are some of the key impediments in your view?
I think, first of all, our debt is too high. So, when you have a lot of debt, problem in Jamaica, but Trinidad is an exception, that you have to generate a lot of primary surpluses to extinguish the debt. So it's almost like you're amortizing it. So that means less fiscal space for other things, right? So I think that's one thing. How we get, well, our economies are synchronized with the U.S. because we import U.S. monetary policy because we're pegged to the dollar. So if the U.S. does well, we do well. But if you look what's happening globally, it's what my managing director calls the new mediocre. Global growth is weak, and I don't think we really understand why productivity gains are so low. I think it also has to do with the global financial crisis. A lot of networks got destroyed with the collapse, and so when trade is good and robust, global growth is also robust. Now, we are also the victims or hostages of fortune to international convention. When we got out of bananas, we tried offshore. And some of it was loosey-goosey, and quite rightly, the regulatory framework got tightened up. And now, we were on the Caribbean Basin Initiative. After a while, that expired. And now we are in the business of selling passports, right? Sooner or later, that will also be tightened up. But I think one of the other risks that we face is from correspondent banking, which is what oils trade and import. And we are quite open economies. We import a lot. So I think that debt is high. How do we have structural transformation? And we are service-driven economies. I think that what we do well and should continue to do is just basic things, health and education and infrastructure. And I think we're pretty much integrated in the global community. But our debt is too high as a region. So I think, but how do you reduce the debt? Unfortunately, it means austerity, which also affects growth, so it's a vicious circle. But where are the new sources of growth? Maybe that's an area for research. I mean, I don't have the answers, but I would say that it's an old topic, but maybe taking a second look at it, in a holistic way could provide insights. I would say that would be something worthwhile pursuing.
You're watching ECCB Connects, protecting our currency, developing our region. And now for this week's financial tip.
Attack your debt. The goal is to get bills under control and free up cash to move towards your dream.
To view any episode of ECCB Connects, anytime, any place, at your convenience, check out our YouTube channel, ECCB Connects.
We've come to the end of another episode of ECCB Connects. Thank you very much for watching, and we invite you to join us again next week for another program.